Hey, this is Mike, and welcome to the monthly series Shelf Life, where I look back at games I covered about 6 months ago and let you know if they stayed in my collection. And for this month, I'm looking back at March of this year and seeing how those games fared. And as always, hang on until the end if you want to hear the contest results, who gets a free game. And this month, I'll also be revealing the winner of the Roll Camera contest. But that can wait for later. For now, let's see which of these games had Shelf Life. So the first game we're looking at today is So You've Been Eaten. This is one of 2 Kickstarters on the list this month. And this is a 1v1 game from Luda Creations. One player plays a miner going inside of like a space worm to harvest crystals, and the other plays the beast trying to expel said miner without losing the crystals. But the way I covered it for the Kickstarter is looking at both of the solo modes, because you can play as either the miner, which is sort of focused on dice placement, or as the beast, which is focused on card play. And I definitely enjoyed the variety in those 2 roles. I found them both fun, the miner probably a bit more, and I also think this will be one that I can probably play with my kids in 1v1, so it's got a lot going for it and at a very affordable price. Therefore, So You've Been Eaten is definitely a keeper for me, although they did offer to give me a review copy after the campaign funded, but even if they hadn't, I would have pledged this one anyway. Next, we have Meadow from Rebel Studio. This is a competitive game for 1 to 4 players. It does have a solo mode, which is what I covered in the pre-order, I guess it was, but now it has released. And Meadow is sort of a tableau builder where you're trying to get victory points by finding the most beautiful animals and putting them in the right habitats. Basically, you're taking pictures of them thematically. And my family and I enjoyed this one. My wife especially liked all of the artwork. It really is beautiful, all these watercolors. And the basic gameplay was pretty fun too. It could be a little bit random in which cards came out, but the kind of combos you would get in using one card to build into another, and the simple choices of using these little action tiles to go into different rows and columns of the card offer, I thought all that worked really well. But like most Euros, the solo wasn't really engaging enough for me for the long term, and while my wife did like it, I think there are games whose mechanics she enjoys better, so this one was a call for me. Sorry, Meadow. Third on our list, we've got some dinosaurs, Apex Theropod deck building game, the collected edition. And I did get a review copy of this one, and it was definitely a lot of fun. I got this based on Colin's recommendation. This is a competitive deck building game for 1 to 6 players, but you can play it solo, which is how I looked at it. And it's nice that you can have a variety of different dinosaurs you take into action, and also a variety of different main villains, like enemy dinosaurs you're trying to fight against. And there are some cool choices in how you build out your deck and how you fight other monsters. The combat is quick and fun. And one of my favorite things was the different feeling in dinosaurs. Whether I was a small squad of velociraptors or just a few giant T-Rexes, definitely changes up the game. But that being said, I found the game a little bit too random, a little bit too frustrating sometimes, winning or losing without things fully feeling in my control, which is fine, but at least for this one, it wasn't that fun for me in the long haul. So Apex Theropod, also a call for me. Next, we have Bloodborne, the board game, a fully cooperative game from CMON for 1 to 4 players. And I bought the core game of this myself, did not get a review copy, and this is one I really enjoyed. In my top games of 2021, I think this was my number 3 or 2, so definitely one I was enjoying. And that's still the case. I'm a huge fan of the original video game, and I really think this game does a better job than most of bringing that IP to life. And the game is fast and frantic. Setup doesn't take too long. I really like the combat mechanics. They can be a little bit random sometimes, depending on which card comes out for an enemy's attack, but it plays really smoothly. It's consistently tense. Like I said, I love the theme, so this is a sure keeper for me. And at number 5, we have In Magnificent Style, specifically the deluxe edition that came out, I think, this year or last year. And this one is a solo-only war game. It uses the same system as Crowbar, also designed by Herman Luttman that I've covered in the past. And the basic idea is you have this big line of troops, and you can push your luck to move them farther and farther ahead on a given turn. But if you try to move too far ahead, you could leave them exposed, break down your line, and get them killed. And the game is incredibly tough, really challenging to do well, as it should be, because historically, Pickett's Charge did not go very well for Pickett. And it's also quick to set up, quick to play, has nice narrative through the event cards. So this is one I enjoy a lot more than the average solo war game, so for now, In Magnificent Style is a keeper. And next we have the second Kickstarter I covered in March, Epic 7 Arise. And oof, this was a little bit of a rough one. I wasn't sure I wanted to cover this. This is one of those cases where I didn't look at the rulebook as closely as I usually do before agreeing to look at something. And I wish I had. I like the anime aesthetic okay, although this one really goes into the fan service and over-sexualization of women that I don't like in many animes. But the big thing here is that the gameplay just felt unfinished and not fun, and the scenario had no balance at all. I completely steamrolled it, and I know they're still developing things, but I'm not sure if they're developing them enough to change the game into something that I would think is good. So, yeah, not that I was ever planning to necessarily back this one anyway, but certainly my play of it did not push me in that direction. So this is a sure call. And then we have one from Fantasy Flight Games, X-Men Mutant Insurrection, a solo and cooperative game for 1 to 6 players based on the Elder Sign system of Yahtzee-ish dice rolling, where you're trying to overcome mutant villains as the X-Men in scenarios that are based on many of the famous comic book arcs. And that right there is something I liked. I liked how they had some narrative in this one and really paid attention to famous comic books because I used to read X-Men back in the day. But the gameplay was not great. I like Elder Sign, and this felt like a step backwards in many ways. Like they tried to give the player more mitigation and they tried to have more of a balance of difficulty, but I feel like every choice they made backfired and made the design worse. And it's really telling that Colin bought the copy that I played, and within a week he was like, I'm done with this, I'm sending it to you, and within a week of me having it, I sent it on to somebody else. This is not one I recommend anybody buy. Maybe if Fantasy Flight comes out with an expansion to give it more content and kind of fix up some mechanics like what they did for Fallout, maybe it's worth a look, but for now I would say a definite pass. Unless you absolutely love Elder Sign and love X-Men, then it might work for you, but this is definitely a call. And getting to the last couple games, we have the Search for Planet X. I did receive a review copy of this one. It's from Foxtrot Games and Renegade. And this is a competitive deduction game for 2 to 4 players, but it also has a solo mode, which is what I covered, and that does require the use of an app. And man, I gotta say, I really like the way this solo works. I don't know if I've played anything besides Black Sonata that has solo deduction, but it's really great here. The logic puzzle is nice and varied with these different clues and different research elements that you can gather. You can play on a basic or advanced side of the board to really ramp up the complexity and the options available to you. And I just think this one is a ton of fun. Now, I also enjoy it competitively, but this is one that I think I can recommend even just for solo play. I think it's still worth the value. So, at least for me, definitely a keeper. And finally, we have the last game on the list. This is almost a joke entry because it's Salvation Road. And if you don't know, this is the first game that was ever published that I designed along with Peter Goosis. And my wife, Vanessa, very early in her art career, did the illustrations and the graphic design for it. So yeah, I can't get rid of this one. I mean, obviously. Now, if you watch my review of my own game, you saw that I thought there were a lot of flaws and mistakes we made in the design. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I still enjoy playing it. Although even if I didn't, I would probably keep it just because it's mine and my wife did the art, and how can I really get rid of it? But enough about that. If you knew I designed the game, I'm sure it was pretty obvious that Salvation Road is going to stay a keeper. So there we have it, only 4 games called out of 9. Maybe I'm losing my edge. But let's jump right to our 2 contests, the roll camera movie pitch ideas, and of course our regular voting on shelf life. All right, so before we get to the winners, let's look at how the games performed in the votes. We had over 100 entrants, kind of our usual numbers. So the game that received the most correct votes was Epic 7. 80% of you knew I would call it, and X-Men Insurrection was not far behind. 78% thought I would call this. Then dropping down a bit, some keepers. Search for Planet X got 73% of you assuming I would keep it. Salvation Road, 60, big drop off there. And then sort of in the middle, 58% of you thought I would call Apex Theropod, 57% Meadow, and 56% thought I would keep So You've Been Eaten. And then just below 50%, this surprised a lot of you, Bloodborne only got 49%. And then, wow, probably, maybe the lowest keeper vote of a game that I actually kept, In Magnificent Style only got 19% of you thinking it would stay in my collection. That definitely messed up a lot of brackets. And we had 3 best performers in the voting this month, Dan Balaz, Brandon Ferrer, and Matthew Powers. But Brandon thought I would keep Meadow. That took him down to an 8 out of 9. And Matthew thought I would call the Search for Planet X. That took him out of it. So Dan Balaz, a perfect 9 out of 9. We always seem to find at least one person who hits it exactly. Great job, Dan. I'll be contacting you for your free game. And finally, we have the Roll Camera contest. If you didn't see this one, it was a contest for you to enter with the best movie pitch for a movie that would star me and some of the other OSCS crew. And my 2 favorite pitches came from Joseph Yavara and Ted Cultrera. Let's look at both of them before we announce the winner. Coming to Hallmark this fall, Mike is a wildly successful video game Twitch streamer who seemingly has it all. One fall morning, Mike is called back to his small rural northeastern US town by his high school buddy Colin. At first, Mike has a hard time letting go of his current lifestyle, worrying about losing followers on Twitch. But as he and Colin reminisce about the old times playing board games over pumpkin spice lattes, Mike starts to realize there's more to life than subscriber counts. This culminates in Mike helping out the whole OSCS gang put together the annual Fall Board Gaming Festival in his hometown, and Mike learning that life is really about the people, or the meeples, you meet along the way. One Stop's first live show was a tremendous success. An unusually harsh and critical review of Robo-Colonist, the first board game designed by an AI, was especially notable. The scathing commentary was shared and enjoyed by millions, propelling One Stop to the top. One small problem: the game's creator, Deep 7, was not pleased. It insisted on bringing the hellish landscape of its own game to reality. Now the two gamers must use their expertise in a mysterious prototype D20 to face the Robo-Colonist for one final play. So there you go, kind of two different types of movies there, but I enjoyed both of those. So who's winning? Well, both of you. I'm going to send a copy of Roll Camera to each of them. One will get my copy and one will get the extra copy they sent. So there you go, a tip for shelf life 6 months from now. And that is it. Thanks to everybody if you hung on this long, and check out next month's episode of Shelf Life.